So today we're going to be talking about the 1977 movie Star Wars 4: A New Hope. So what's going on, guys? Well, I have to be honest with you. I haven't really been that big of a fan of Star Wars. Um, when I was growing up, I had this thing where if one of my particular brothers really enjoyed a certain set of movies, like really anything that he enjoyed, it was my duty, my obligation to hate it. So I really spent a lot of time hating these movies because he was enamored with the Star Wars franchise. I think he even liked the prequels too, don't quote me on that, but that was an actual thing that happened. So for a long time, I really didn't ever approach the Star Wars franchise. Not the original movies, not the prequel movies, not really anything. The really first time that I ever got any interest in this whatsoever was at the end of 2015 when I was back in my college town of Muncie, Indiana, and one of my best friends had an extra ticket for me to go see The Force Awakens. So I went to go see it, and I thought the movie was okay. Not great, but okay. And I felt good about it, but I didn't really feel like it was worth all of the hype that I was continually receiving day in and day out about this damn movie. So I ordered the original trilogy of the Star Wars franchise about a year ago, I guess, on Amazon. And I hadn't really gotten around to watching it until today, actually, because I've been trying to watch another George Lucas movie for these sets of reviews called Howard the Duck. And considering I couldn't get through 20 minutes of that movie after 5 attempts in a row, I decided, what the hell? I'll try a different movie that has a more tried and true formula. So I went to Star Wars. And today I watched the first movie in this entire franchise, the first one ever made, namely the one you're watching about right now, A New Hope, which was made in 1977 by, of course, George Lucas. So is this movie actually any good? Well, you have to really keep in mind, what exactly are we looking at here? What time frame are we evaluating here? What exactly is going on in the story that makes it unique, that makes it stand out? Well, to be honest with you, not really a lot of movies are really trying this kind of angle. Fantasy movies really hadn't got as much coverage, as much money, any of those kinds of things until Star Wars came around. There wasn't really a lot of movies about this quest, about this journey, that weren't really set in the Greek or Roman times. Think like Camelot or Arthur or Julius Caesar or Cleopatra or any of those kinds of desert looking landscapes. Now, of course, this movie has a desert, but that's not really the point. So, you have this kid, essentially, this Luke Skywalker, and you really get this sense that he's yearning for something more. I mean, fuck. I was waiting for him to, break out in a Disney princess song, for goodness sake. But what do I know? And this whole Imperial fight happens on the Death Star, and you see Princess Leia is importing a message to this droid named R2D2, and R2D2 and his, I guess, sidekick, partner, whatever, C3PO, gets sent out to this other planet, and you don't really see what happens in terms of how they get to this planet, but they get there, and they're in the middle of the desert, and they both get caught by the Jawas on separate occasions, and they end up being more or less prisoners in the same prison by the Jawas. Okay, sure. And then they come together and they get dropped off at this set of husband and wife who happen to be the aunt and uncle of Luke, and you don't know what happened to Luke's father, and Luke's uncle seems particularly protective, and Luke's aunt is maybe given like 3 lines of dialogue, but you know, it's the late 70s. No one gives a shit about women. Who cares, right? So she doesn't really have a lot of a character in this. With the exception of Princess Leia, of course. She's a badass. And you get the sense that something sinister is going on. Obviously, Luke's uncle is hiding something because he talks about how Luke's father is kind of scary. He doesn't ever say those words, but he gets worried that Luke is turning out just like Luke's father, which in this case would be this uncle's brother. He clearly knows something that we don't as the audience. And I'm thinking throughout the scene, okay, you know, Luke and his uncle are actually going to have something fleshed out here. They're going to have something that makes a difference here. But through this whole process, R2D2 has this little clip of a message that Princess Leia left on his memory space. Okay. And it just says that Obi-Wan Kenobi, I need your help. And that's really pretty much it. And so Luke, for whatever reason's like, oh, I don't know an Obi-Wan Kenobi, but I know a Ben Kenobi. Sure, fine, okay. And he gets out earlier than most days, pretending like he's going for the harvest when really he doesn't give a rat's ass about the harvest. He just wants to find this damn Obi-Wan Kenobi because he thinks his princess is hot. Sure, fine. And he finds Ben Kenobi, but not really in the sense of he, you know, came across him at the end. No, he got attacked by the Jawas because he was really looking for R2D2 because R2D2 escaped looking for Obi-Wan, and R2D2's ass got kicked. And I've seen the meme of R2D2 falling down enough times to, you know exactly what's going on when it's being referred to. That's something that really got ruined for me about this movie. So obviously, after X number of years, especially in the age of the internet, most people don't really care if they're spoiling things for you or not because you've had plenty of years to go see this movie. You know what the fuck's wrong with you if you haven't seen it. But the reality is, some movies are so good. Well, maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit for this one, but some movies are so well revered in pop culture that virtually all of the twists and turns are revered as well. And so, even if you've never seen the film at hand, you know what's going to happen. But not because you can predict it happening, you just know it because people won't shut the fuck up about it. So, you know, for example, spoiler, but later on in this trilogy, you know, that Darth Vader is going to be Luke's father. Well, that would have been a great reveal had it not been mentioned to me 100,000 goddamn times. You know? And especially because, you know, Obi-Wan basically says that Darth Vader murdered your father, Luke. That is what happened. And you trust Obi-Wan Kenobi because he seems very knowledgeable and very wise. So it wouldn't really be much of a lie from Obi-Wan, would it? He doesn't seem like the kind of type that would lie without any reason. He might conceal information, but he wouldn't lie about it, you know? He would most likely commit a white lie as opposed to an outright lie. But that's not the point. The point is that R2D2 is looking for Obi-Wan, and Luke is responsible for R2D2, so he searches out for R2D2 with C-3PO's help, and C-3PO is a bumbling idiot. That's the best I got. Sure. And they find R2D2, but then their asses get kicked by the Jawas, but then Obi-Wan Kenobi comes out, and oh snap, the Jawas flee, and Obi-Wan takes in Luke Skywalker because he knows about Luke's father. But obviously, not everything's being revealed to us. Obi-Wan's going to reveal as much as Obi-Wan wants to reveal. And he talks about the Force and how Luke needs to learn the ways of the Force. And something that really caught me off guard about this movie was that it was better than I expected. Actually, a lot better than I expected. Maybe I just thought that this movie was so overhyped and that movie 7, The Force Awakens, was kind of that that any of the original movies were just kind of as well by association because most people won't shut their traps about it, you know? So I was pleasantly surprised when this movie actually turned out to be a good movie. And not just a good movie, but, on the verge of being a great movie. I won't go as far as saying it's a great movie, but I will find that considering I thought I was going to hate this movie, the fact that I borderline loved it, like 88% of the way there to loving it, I feel like it exceeded my expectations quite a bit. So Luke is confronted with a decision. Does he follow his uncle's request and stay around the area for another year or so for another season of harvest, or does he get the hell out while he can? Well, it turns out he doesn't really have much of a decision because he crashes by his home and finds that not only is it destroyed, but that his aunt and uncle are dead. So there isn't really much of a decision to be made. He's like, well, I'm definitely going to hang out with your sorry ass, Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm glad you invited me because I would have invited myself regardless. Really? What kind of decision is that? Of course he's gonna go with you. He has no other choice. There's no conflict between whether or not he's going to stay back at home and doing the harvest. Now, yeah, we all know that he's gonna go and be a Jedi and kick some dark ass, but he doesn't know that yet, right? He needs a little bit of training, a little bit of faith. I really thought this movie missed an opportunity in terms of, being able to prove the uncle wrong. I thought the uncle was a piece of shit, but I at least would have liked to seen, I don't know, some conflict between Luke and the uncle that was a little more than just like a 16-year-old asking his dad if he could drive the car for a hot second, I felt like there really could have been a lot more tension that could have been plucked out of it. And it was just kind of a cop out to just kill off the aunt and uncle and say, oh, you don't really have a choice. You're going to go be an intergalactic fighter now, Luke, whether you like it or not. I guess that plays into his character later on, but this just felt like a missed opportunity to me. But in the grand scheme of things, this is my really biggest nitpick with this movie. Because the rest of the movie works out really, just like a gem. It's solid, is what I'm getting at here. Something else I should mention before we get back into the space side of things, basically not on Luke's home planet, is that some of the creatures that are shown here are pretty entertaining. You've got the Jawas, you've got the, quote, sand people, as Luke calls them. You've got these yaks, which like the sand people or the stormtroopers or whoever ride. They were pretty cool. I felt really dumb when I first wanted to call them yams, but yams and yaks are clearly the same thing, of course. But the yaks were pretty awesome. I loved the horns that they gave them. They kind of spun around, and I also just loved the design. Some things I could tell were put in post-production. For example, back when this movie was made in the late 70s, CGI wasn't really quite a thing, but I guess when they put this on the special edition that I have, like it's like a Blu-ray DVD combo, they wanted to put Jabba the Hutt in as CGI. It looks kind of questionable, to be honest with you, but Han Solo interacts with it just fine. So while the design doesn't look great and it sticks out like a sore thumb, Han Solo at least interacts with it enough that if you're not being too picky about it, I mean, I'm kind of being a little picky about it, but you get my drift. It'll work. It works. Han Solo makes the scene sellable at least, so you can't really blame him. But it was kind of an unfortunate addition, but really it pales in comparison. That's my kind of view on this whole thing. There were some things that really bothered me, such as the conflict of Luke and his uncle not really being drawn out enough, and maybe the Jabba the Hutt CGI, and maybe a couple of other contrivances. But aside from those things, this movie really worked together as a cohesive whole. Now, George Lucas said that his script was like 200 pages or so, in his commentary, but that he decided to just basically make 3 movies of Saturday serials, as he called them, and release Act 1, which was A New Hope in this case, to really get the groundwork for all of these characters. You don't even get the major spoiler about the connection between Darth Vader and Luke until later. That's going to come at another time, not in this movie. But, anywho, you have Obi-Wan as Luke's mentor, and they go elsewhere, and I guess Obi-Wan controls the minds of these stormtroopers that are looking for them, and convinces them to not card Obi-Wan and Luke, but rather that everything is fine and that they can just go through. And Luke is just like, how in the world did you do that? And of course Obi-Wan's like, the Force, Luke, the Force. Sure, Obi-Wan, sure. Then they get to this bar, and it's a bar. Everyone's gotta have a place where they can kick it back and have a few. I get that, trust me. But this place is a little weird because they walk in there. There's some band playing. Some aliens play some flutes or clarinets or some shit. I don't know. But they get up to the bar, and I guess they don't serve droids. They get really pissy about R2D2 and C3PO. But when Luke gets up to the bar, these couple of weird guys, one that's like a full alien, but then one that's half alien, half human face, starts picking shit with Luke, and Luke's just like, what did I do wrong? Because he did nothing wrong. And this asshole's just like, well, I don't like you at all, and my friend doesn't like you either. And he starts trying to pick a fight with Luke, to which I say, why? What did Luke do? There wasn't even any actual reason, Obviously, they're trying to paint Luke as a white knight of sorts. I mean, that is obvious from the get-go. But they don't even show any tarnishes of Luke to really, point at and say, haha, you're stupid, you did something wrong. So why is this guy trying to pick a fight with him? And I guess Obi-Wan doesn't mess around and slices the guy's arm off, because, it happens. And really, they treat it like, it happens, because they just go back to business as usual. The bartender's like, yeah, okay. Even after Luke taps him on the back of his shoulder. All I know is if I went to a bar and had the gall or audacity to, lean over the bar and tap the bartender on the back of his shoulder, 98 times out of 100, the bartender would look at me and say, what the fuck, dude? Because that's tasteless. That's stupid. But I guess it works here. Sure. So anyway, they're at this bar because Obi-Wan's going to meet up with Chewbacca, and Chewbacca's going to recruit the biggest badass of a pilot, who happens to be Han Solo, and they meet up in this bar, and they talk about things, and Han Solo, you can tell he's a money-grubbing motherfucker, and he's all like, I want 10 grand right now, no questions about it. And, you got Obi-Wan, who's like, how about 2 grand right now, but I'll give you 15 grand when we land on Alderaan. He's gonna pay him off pretty well. In other words, he's like, listen, I'm willing to pay you, but you gotta get us there. I don't trust this all in advance nonsense. I will pay you more if you follow through, and, don't give us a lot of flack about it or any questions. So Han Solo's like, well, I really need the money. I got debts to pay. And it turns out he really does, because the next thing you know, you got this, Greedo guy who comes up to him and is like, yo, you got debts to pay me, and you got debts to pay Jabba. But, if you pay me, maybe I won't say anything about it to Jabba, about seeing you here in this little no-name place. And Han Solo's like, okay. And you see Greedo shoot his gun, but then Greedo's dead? What the hell? And I guess this has been a hotly contested and a debatable thing of who shot first, Greedo or Han Solo. In my opinion, it's clear that Greedo had the gun out first. You don't even see any video clip of Han Solo ever shooting the trigger. But Greedo's dead, so I guess Han Solo shot first? Whatever, maybe they shot at the same time and Greedo is a bad marksman. Who knows? And who cares? The reality is that I could talk about this movie for a few hours on end, and I still wouldn't even be a third of the way done with this, so I'll try to be a little faster. So, Han Solo kicks Greedo's ass. Whether or not it makes sense doesn't really matter at this point. And he flees, and he goes to the Millennium Falcon as he proclaims, as his pride and glory and all that jazz. And you can tell Luke's kind of a hot shot, and he's like, "Oh, I can fly planes. I'm so great." And Han Solo's like, "Listen, you little shit. Just stop right now." And Luke's not going to stop right now. But they both have points to prove. Han Solo's, basically in it for himself. He has his friend named Chewie that he always hangs around with, and Chewie doesn't really have any intelligible dialogue. Han Solo just says, "Yeah, okay, sure, Chewie. Got it, Chewie. I hear you, Chewie." And it's the same thing as Luke Skywalker and R2D2. R2D2 has a lot of beep boop, beep boop, beep boop, beep boop. And Luke's just like, "Okay, R2D2, I get that. That makes sense." C3PO has a lot more of that, but that's not the point. Fun fact, I actually had an R2D2 cassette tape player when I was like, I don't know, 7 or 8. Just because you haven't watched the movies doesn't mean you can't have any of the merchandise, which I think they were going for. Yeah, shit. Okay, so now what? They're gonna go take this Millennium Falcon. They're gonna go fly into space. They're gonna break into hyperspace. Oh man, this is intense. Well, I guess intense is not the right word because I know it's gonna happen, but it's badass. It's pretty cool. Figuring out all these like techno babble and different things that they use and how they get from one place to the next. All this journey, mama, 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 baba, 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 whatever. And you realize that Carrie Fisher's character, God rest her soul, Princess Leia, she's not entirely a damsel in distress. Yeah, sure, she gets caught, but that's because she's part of the Rebel Alliance. I mean, hell, there's the opening crawl, which I didn't mention, but most people know about anyway. The opening crawl is actually a lot briefer than I expected. It summarizes a lot of things for you that are understandable and easy to digest. That's something else too. You feel like you're gonna be super smart after this movie, and you feel like you're very knowledgeable, but it's not super complex. It's not super hard. You can really get invested into the story. You can kind of get geeked out without really feeling like you have to be a full blown geek, which either is the tipping point of mass marketing or it's just an awesome feeling. You could say it's both. But you have Princess Leia. She does get captured, unfortunately, of course. And you have Han Solo and Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi flying out in hyperspace to the Death Star. And so what's going to happen next? Well, it turns out that on Han Solo and Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi's journey to Alderaan, the Princess Leia ends up confessing that the Rebel Alliance has a base on the planet Tatooine because she thinks that she's going to save her home planet of Alderaan. Go figure. But it turns out that the person that cornered her about this, the leader of the Imperial Senate, is like, You should learn who to trust, Sweet Cheeks. She doesn't say Sweet Cheeks, but it doesn't really matter. And he destroys the planet anyway. That's a bummer. Uh, um, and of course, Princess Leia. She keeps getting called Leia, by the way, which I'm like, why would you have the name of Leia if you don't even call her Leia? What the hell is the point of that? Anyway, um, she's just like, oh, ugh, shit. My planet's no mas. That's awful. And of course, Luke Skywalker and Han Solo are coming across the planet Alderaan after this happens, and Han Solo's like, nothing's here. And Luke's like, what do you mean? Of course it's here. And Han Solo's like, no, you little bug. It's really not here. It must have been destroyed. But Obi-Wan knows this because he has the Force with him. Which, whatever you want to call the Force. At least it has a backstory. At least it sounds cool. At least you can actually learn things about the Force. I mean, hell, Obi-Wan Kenobi teaches Luke about the Force and how he doesn't need to physically see because his eyes will deceive him. His words, not mine. And how Luke can learn a lot from the Force. And you get the sense that this Darth Vader, this really dark guy, really knows the Force too. Of course, it's played by James Earl Jones, the voice is, and then the person that actually physically plays Darth Vader is, not mentioned as often. I mean, his name's scrolled by so quick at the end of the credits, I was like, I don't even know, and I don't really even care. I probably will someday, but not today. But thinking of James Earl Jones walking around as Darth Vader is funny. The point is, Darth Vader is a badass character because not only is he just this obviously leader of evil, but he gets the sense of the Force too. He gets the vibe. You get the feeling or sense that something else is going on with this Darth Vader that isn't quite described. And okay, for 97% of you people, it's obvious what's going on here. But for the 3% that don't know, I won't mention it. But you get the feeling that Darth Vader knows quite a bit about this Force. And he can even feel when Obi-Wan Kenobi's on deck, and you're like, what's going on here? What's this trickery that he's up to? And what's this whole Imperial Senate going on? Because Darth Vader's kind of a badass in the fact that he can just choke whoever he wants without even laying a physical finger on them. Some homeboy, I don't know, some asshole in a uniform starts saying stuff about how we don't need to listen to Vader and yada yada yada, and then Vader does this motion with his hands, and it essentially constricts the vocal cords so it looks like this, but 8 times worse, and I can't even talk if it really happened to me. If I smoked 8 packs of Marlboros a day for 40 years, if I was still alive somehow, um, anyway, he can do shit without even touching you, and it's freaky. Enough said. So now what? Well, Han Solo manages to land the Millennium Falcon onto the drop-off base, where the planes land on the Death Star, and he lands the plane out of nowhere. The stormtroopers kind of surround it, and then they kick some major ass and get into all these laser fights, which I have to admit, the laser fights are pretty much one of the coolest things of this movie. People tend to revere Episode 5, which I haven't seen, but I will probably like it, at least. I may even love it, who knows. But in this Episode 4, the laser fights, definitely a baller part of this movie, for sure. You see plenty of even Princess Leia kicking some ass, and I'm gonna call her Leia. I don't give a flying fuck if they say Leia the entire time. I don't want to say the name Leia anymore. There you go. And you get the sense that a lot of other things are going on. That this clearly is an Act 1 of at least a 3-act play, if not an even longer play. And you get all of these laser fights, and then you get a showdown between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader. The unfortunate part is that, spoiler, that Darth Vader kills Obi-Wan Kenobi, and but at the same time, you don't really get the sense that it was all on Vader's terms. You got the feeling that Obi-Wan looked at Luke Skywalker and thought, I have faith in this young Padawan. And I keep wanting to say young Padawan. I didn't even hear it in this movie, but I know I've heard it somewhere. I don't really care where I heard it anymore. But anyway, Luke has had favor by Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Obi-Wan knows that Luke's going to follow through, so Luke looks at Obi-Wan as he says, fuck it, and lets Darth Vader slice and dice through him as his body disappears into nothing. To which Luke is like, no. And of course, that's not the big no scene. That's another movie. And you get all these other things that go on, like Princess Leia and Han Solo and Chewie and Luke all go into a garbage chute and they're almost going to be destroyed. But at some point, C-3PO and R2-D2 are in the command center where they're controlling all of the boards and operations of things. And at the very last second, C-3PO saves their sorry asses, even though C-3PO doesn't think he does. Because he's like, oh no, they're dead because of me. And then Luke is like, no, we're not, you crazy ass. We're alive because of you. Thank you so much. And I don't think C-3PO ever learns about it until like 2 movies later. But anyway, R2-D2 is just seen as this vessel of information and clearly more valuable than C-3PO, even though R2-D2 has no audible words to us, while C-3PO has plenty. Meanwhile, during a lot of this hubbub, you can tell that Luke is clearly enamored with Leia because she's a princess, and Luke feels that it's his duty, his quest, if you will, to protect this sorry princess, even though she can do plenty on her own. But that's not the point here. Luke is enamored regardless. And you have this Han Solo guy who was there just for the money at first, but he keeps sticking around for reasons we don't know. Assume whenever I say we don't know that I'm just talking within this franchise as opposed to the pop culture. We'll get to that in a minute. And you have Princess Leia, who can get her way out of a number of things, but has been caught a time or two at this point. She was held prisoner, and Luke had to go to that cell of hers and get her out of there. And then they ended up in the garbage chute, and then they got out by the stroke of fortune between Luke and C-3PO and stopping the garbage chute from compacting them into nothing. But then you have them escape back into the Millennium Falcon by a lot of laser fights, by a lot of lightsaber things. Okay, mainly just one lightsaber thing, but a lot of laser fights for sure, which are great, fantastic. And they get out to the Millennium Falcon. Then they go back to the planet where the Rebel Alliance is, that Tatooine, and they go to the Rebel base, and all these pilots in their orange little jumpsuits, whatever you want to call it. Luke gets dressed up into one of those orange jumpsuits. He apparently knows one of the pilots. Okay, we don't really get a reason why he knows them, but okay, sure. And they get into this like 15 to 20 minute, maybe even close to 30 minute, showdown between the Rebel Alliance and the Imperial base, which is pretty cool, to be honest with you. I get a lot of hype about this movie. I see a lot of it. I receive it. That's what I mean by get here. But the fact that this movie actually delivers, it's pretty great. I'm impressed. And it really gets down to like a 20 minutes or so, set of these cool visuals with all these dodging of planes and all this technological programming, but you don't feel like you're taking a brand new computer science class. You feel like you're following right along with everything, and pretty much everyone except for like one other pilot and Luke get killed off from the Rebel Alliance. And at this point, you don't see Han Solo. He just kind of disappears, and he's like, "Oh, I'm leaving," and Luke is like, well, you better take care of yourself because that's what you're best at, isn't it? And it's like, oh, Luke just told off Han Solo. Oh shit. But Han Solo comes back and was like, I was gonna come back. I'm not a total asshole. To which Princess Leia is like, yeah, I kind of felt like he wasn't gonna be 100% of a novelty character. And you were correct, Princess Leia. He was not a 100% novelty character. He was a 94% novelty character. But I digress. So they get down to this final showdown, and then they blow up the Death Star, and it's pretty baller. And I have to mention the explosion in this movie. The explosions in this movie are pretty baller. They're great, and it's awesome, and it's a lot of fun. And of course, I can see a lot of where Episode 7 borrowed from. You didn't think I was gonna go without mentioning that at least once, right? I can see it. That being said, I'm glad I saw Episode 7 on its own terms so I could appreciate it in its own ways. Now, this movie ends with Han Solo and Luke getting medals, and throughout, Princess Leia has been giving Luke these like appreciatory kisses on the cheek. You know, nothing like tongue on tongue or making out or anything like that. But you can tell that Princess Leia is thankful for Luke and that he is very protective and wants to make sure that she is going to get out of all these places alive. And that's where the movie ends. And there's plenty more story, plenty more fan theories, plenty more of what could be going on. So, what are my final thoughts on this movie? I really liked it. I have to admit, I didn't think I was going to hate it. It's revered as one of the best movies of all time, for goodness sakes. I mean, that's why it's on this quest for the best, you know? But at the same time, I guess I had just heard so much hype, just heard all of this great talk about how it's such a wonderful movie and blah, blah, blah. And I don't care. But I watched it for myself and I took this into mind and I thought, wow, this is actually a good movie. It's even close for me to even say it's a great movie. It's not my all time favorite movie, but I can definitely see why people love this movie. It's fantastic, to be honest with you. It really does keep you invested from the get go. I, I know comparing it to Howard the Duck is kind of weird, but considering this was also another film that was produced by George Lucas, just the difference in quality was enormous, for one thing. And even though I love a smart talking duck, I thought this story had a lot more cohesion and it got me hooked. And I wanted to know more about these darn characters and where they were going to go. I wanted to see what was going to happen to Luke. I wanted to see how Princess Leia was going to kick some ass. I wanted to know more about Han Solo and even, you know, the characters that didn't talk as much, you know, like Chewbacca or R2D2 or C3PO. But, you know, I don't want to know a whole lot about C3PO. I know plenty, but, you know, I was at least curious where he was going to end up in all of this. He ends up in a relatively good place. And to be honest with you, I thought this was way too overdue to watch this movie, considering, you know, I have sat through Spaceballs, for goodness sake, and I've sat through more than one parody of this. The most notable parody of this that I've seen being the Family Guy one, and I liked that for reasons that, you know, not even Family Guy could cover on their own. So I knew something had to be good about this movie, and it turned out there was quite a bit that was good about this movie. I think the biggest thing for me was just that hype really can either build up a movie to its fullest potential or destroy it to the lowest common denominator. And frankly, I was just getting really pissed off that no one would ever shut their little traps about this movie, about any of these movies, you know? They'd be obsessed about it and they would never stop talking about it. And I was like, well, what's so damn good about it? And now I have a better idea of what people like, you know, why they like it, and just what draws them back every single time. And to be honest with you, I have plenty of the merchandise. You know, I say if I have more than a couple of things that are Star Wars esque, and I wasn't even a fan or even really watched any of the movies and thought, "Oh, that was a good movie," until today, then I would say it's had a pretty solid impact on our culture. And I would say this movie is worth checking out. I did give this movie an A after, a lot of careful thought in terms of not being too harsh on the movie because of hype, but also not building up the movie to stratospheric levels because of the hype either. I thought, let me just rate this movie as I would any other movie. And it wasn't my top two or even top three, but I still thought it had A rating, and I thought it fit towards the middle of my quest for the best. And yeah, and you can see what my results are here. And so, let me know what your thoughts are, or if you have any ideas for what I should do next. All right. Y'all are a lot of fun, and I hope you have a great day now. All right. Bye.